Hey, welcome back everyone. So in preparation for the Rise of Iron, Bungie are going to be releasing update 2.4.0, which will bring about some new weapon changes and weapon balancing to prepare the weapon sandbox for some of the new weapons that are going to be arriving with the Rise of Iron. Now this update has hit a few specific exotics, so there's going to be some changes to certain exotics, and then of course there's going to be some general changes to a few general weapon types, which will be seen in the full patch notes. But in this video we're going to be taking a look at the exotic changes. So, the first on the list is Fabian Strategy. Now, this was a surprising one to see on this list. So, the changes are, kills with this weapon now automatically load a portion of the magazine, and increase base damage plus 16%, and stability plus 44%. Now, personally, I'm really excited by this. Of course, this is a good improvement to make to the gun, and it's good news to me, especially because I actually kind of like the Fabian Strategy. A lot of people tend to just disregard this weapon and don't really use the Fabian Strategy too often. I very rarely see this weapon in the Crucible, but I actually really like this weapon a lot, so I'm really looking forward to using this after the update and seeing just how much better it performs, because if you can handle this weapon and handle the recoil, it can actually be a surprisingly effective gun. So I'm personally really glad to hear that. The next weapon we have on the list is Thorn. Not too surprising to see this weapon on the list. Now the only change to this weapon is reduced base range by 25%. So yet again, this weapon has been nerfed, and I don't really know how badly this is going to affect the weapon. I haven't used Thorn in ages, probably since year 1. That was the last time I probably used Thorn, and since then I haven't used it. I haven't used it after the April update, so I've no idea how this one performs now, but considering not many people use it, I can't imagine this is going to do very well for the weapon, and it's probably just going to make the weapon even less desirable. Now, the reason Bungie did this was because they looked at Thorn's strengths and decided what would be the best route to take and what would be the best way to avoid a repeat of year 1 when Thorn just dominated the Crucible. Its strengths are the damage over time, of course, which helps to provide information on where an enemy is located, as well as delay the health recovery. It is amongst the family of hand cannons with the fastest rate of fire, and with the Send It perk equipped, it is effectively the best in its class in terms of range. Now, beyond the 25% range reduction, I can't imagine Bungie are going to be making any more changes to the Thorn, at least anytime soon, considering Thorn is going to be making a return in the Rise of Iron, along with an exotic quest, and Bungie have mentioned elsewhere that they feel like it's in an almost ideal spot as it is right now, and so they won't be making any major changes to Thorn anytime soon. Moving on, next on the list we have Universal Remote. This one got hit pretty hard with a nerf. So the changes are, exotic perk range bonus reduced by 75%, no longer guarantees maximum shotgun range, and increased rate of fire, lowers damage as a secondary effect. So the range bonus granted by the exotic perk has been reduced by 75%, that's a pretty big change, and as compensation they've increased the rate of fire, but in brackets it says lowers damage as a secondary effect. I'm not sure if this means that they've lowered the overall damage, or if each shot after the first one lowers in damage. I guess we'll just have to wait for the patch to finish being deployed for us to find out. Next weapon on the list is Dreg's Promise. This one received a buff. So firstly, they increased the damage by 8%, very nice, considering this weapon is a bit of a turd, so any sort of buff that I can get is always good to hear. And they've also increased the magazine size by 3. I believe currently it has 18 rounds in the magazine, which gives it a total of 6 bursts, so now it'll have 21 rounds in the magazine, which will mean it'll have 7 bursts. Not much to say other than that. I mean, it's Dreg's Promise, no one's still going to use it. Next weapon on the list is also another one I didn't expect to see on here, and that is the Touch of Malice. So it seems that Bungie don't like the idea of people using Touch of Malice combined with the Defender's Blessing of Light. So now Bungie have now removed that ability to use the Blessing of Light with Touch of Malice, and when you get to that final shot which then starts damaging you, it will just immediately remove the effect of Blessing of Light. So you can no longer bypass the self-damage infliction with Blessing of Light. This is actually a really useful and really popular strategy to use in the fight against Oryx in the King's Fall raid, but I guess it doesn't really matter at this point considering we're less than 2 weeks away from the Rise of Iron, and not really many people are going to be doing King's Fall at this point other than maybe to get some calcified fragments, but the Rise of Iron's almost here anyway, so people are going to be focusing on the new content, and there's going to be new guns anyway, so Touch of Malice just isn't going to be important anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter too much. Anyway, moving on to the next weapon now, yet again another weapon that I didn't expect to see on here, and that is Boolean Gemini. Not sure why this was even considered for any sort of weapon change or buff, because it just seems so random, some of the weapons that are on here. It seems like you don't really hear about these weapons too often, so I guess it's just kind of surprising to see some of these weapons on here. But anyway, Boolean Gemini is getting a buff, and now Bungie have added the intrinsic perk High Caliber Rounds. So this should mean that the weapon will hit a little bit harder and cause more flinch, especially in PvE. It'll cause enemies to flinch a lot more, and then maybe also a little bit in PvP. So I guess that's kind of useful. I mean, can't really complain at all. And then finally we have No Time to Explain, another weapon that you don't really see too many people using, but I actually personally really enjoy to use. Like, this is one of my go-to pulse rifles when I need pulse rifle kills or anything. So now Bungie have added another intrinsic perk to this weapon, and that is Headseek, which is very fitting for this weapon. So what this perk does is it increases the precision damage on a headshot after you hit a body shot. So if 2 of the 3 shots in a burst hit the body of a player, then the final shot hits the head. The headshot will do even more damage than it normally does. Generally this is a really good perk for pulse rifles, but this is going to be especially useful for a weapon like No Time to Explain because of the exotic perk, which returns each round to the magazine every time you get a headshot. So when you get a headshot with No Time to Explain, not only are you potentially doing some bonus damage with a headshot, you could also be getting a bullet or 2 back. So I'm really glad to hear about that change. Definitely going to be also trying out the No Time to Explain again once this update drops. As I'm recording this video, Destiny is currently down for maintenance, just in case you're watching this at the time of upload. Of course, if you're watching this in the future, then completely ignore this, because it's going to be irrelevant by then. I also just want to apologise for the way that I sound in this video. If you've been following me on Twitter, then you'll know that I've been a little bit sick recently, and so recording videos and recording commentaries has been a little bit difficult, and I've been kind of struggling to talk my way through this, but I've made it, I've just made it, I've survived, and we've made it to the end of the video. Anyway, that is it for this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it and found it useful. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.